Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. This is Dr. Hasi, and today's topic is Module 1 in Plant Morphology, BOT3303. So we have, in Module 1, we have 4 chapters, Chapter 1, 3, 23, and 24. So we are going to just go over, summarize a few key points in each chapter. Always start with reading the book, Raven Biology of Plants, 8th edition, and start with chapter 1, and then move to chapter 3, which is tissues, cells, chapter 23, tissues, and chapter 24, root systems. So let's get started with chapter 1, just plant concepts. So chapter 1 is just introduction. It basically talks about why we study plants. As you know, plants are very diverse, and there are 4 major groups like bryophytes, seedless, gymnoplants, and angios plants. And we're talking about over 300,000 species. Basically, we are going to cover all these 4 big groups, starting with non-vascular and vascular and gymno and angio. So the clock, if you remember the biological time clock, that actually, which is overall is 4.5 billion years, which is broken into the different eons. So it's like starting with beginning like Archean, and then Mesoproteo, Paleo, Meso, Neo, and Mesozoic and Cenozoic, and up to the today. We are very interested in when the plants actually show up. So plants are very diverse, and very early plants like bryophytes, which are non-vascular plants, they were some of the earliest, right after algae, that show up in that clock. All right, so 4 eons, 14 eras, 10 to 100 periods, and tens of millions of epochs and ages that actually we can divide this since formation of the solar system started. So it's just basically chapter 1 just talks about just introduction and why plants are important, and a few statistics about plants, and especially flowering plants. So that's chapter 1. Chapter 3 is, you all know, plant cell, which basically it's like animal cell, but actually even has more, probably more organelles, like 17 total organelles. Plant cell is important because plant cell make the plant tissue, they make plant organs, and that makes the organism, which is plant, right? So plant cell, you all know the typical organelles of the plant cell, so just make sure that you study each organelle, pay attention to chloroplast, other plastids, vacuole, cell wall, mitochondria, and you might remember everything started with 1665, Robert Hooke, which is actually discovery of microscope and looking at the plant cork cells, basically, and then since then, last 400, almost 400 years, we're using microscope and actually studying plant cells. There is this whole cell theory developed in the next 200 years by other scientists, and basically we now know that actually all cells come from pre-existing cells, and cell is the smallest unit of all living organisms. So this chapter talks about different groups of plant cell types, starting with parenchyma and collenchyma, sclerenchyma, water-conducting cells, sugar-conducting cells, and meristem cells again. So chapter 2 is all about cells. Chapter 23 is about tissues, right? So the next level is tissues. Tissues can be meristematic or permanent tissue like dermal, vascular, or ground, right? And they might be made of, again, cell types like parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. As you see here, sclerenchyma is this thin primary walls, thick secondary walls, but collenchyma is thicker primary walls. Here you see here, parenchyma is thin primary walls, and many basic functions, we see them everywhere, right? So then there is xylem and phloem. Basically, the xylem actually is one way of flow, which water and inorganic minerals. Their cells have no end walls between the cells, so it's like a tubing. It actually goes everywhere in the plants. And the phloem is more like a two-way flow, and water also can go through phloem, but mostly photosynthase. And they have holes. The cells have holes in phloem. Ground tissue can be parenchyma, collenchyma, sclerenchyma. All of these can be actually on ground tissue. Xylem and phloem is very complex tissue. You already know that. Also, in this chapter, there is the meristems, apical meristems, SAM, shoot apical, RAM, root apical meristems. Make sure that you read about those. Parts of the meristem, protoderm, procambium, ground meristem in both RAM and SAM, and also layers like L1, L2, L3. So make sure you pay attention to those. Again, plant tissues can be permanent or meristematic. Meristematic is like which doesn't know what they're going to be, but permanent is they already mature tissue. Location, and structure, right? So location, where they are located, structure, what they look like. There's cell division zones, there are cell elongation zones, and there are vascular bundles, and then they have all these different types of cells. Plant cells overall larger than animal cells. So always remember these key points about cells and tissues. The next chapter is 24, which is root system. Root is the underground part of the plant, which is basically roots don't get as much appreciation because we don't see them as often because they're underground part. Now, but they are important and they have important function. They connect the plants to the soil, and they take the inorganic nutrients and water from the soil and they carry it up. But they also interact with the microbiome, like basically fungi like mycorrhizae in the soil, or bacteria like rhizobia, and that can actually enrich the nitrogen, phosphorus, actually contents of the plants, and that can give plant actually a big advantage. So root systems can be primary, like main root, lateral roots also can be come out from the lateral side, and adventitious roots, like roots that they actually come from above ground, above soil. And also each class has different structure of the root, so pay attention, monocot, eudicot, and root anatomy, right? So what is xylem, where is phloem, where is cortex, where is stele, like vascular cylinder, endodermis, pericycle, and where the lateral root is really originates from. So pay attention to these individual groups. Radicle also is important. This is the like baby root, which basically is the very first thing come out from the germination. Look at those as well. And hydroponics is a technique that basically relate to roots, because roots are immersed in nutrient solution, but not in soil, but in nutrient solution. So aeroponics is another form of that basically there is a mist, but not full water in around. So review these. This is there are 4 chapters, and we will do also more review, and reach out to me in Canvas, send me an inbox message if you have more questions, or come by office hours. So thank you for watching, and best of success. I will see you in the next video. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to the channel. Dr. Asi Explains.